I nursed my father-in-law through his stroke while my own dad died alone. I was at the funeral when I got a voicemail, "You don't live here anymore." I rushed back to find my things in a storage unit and my husband gone. His mother said, "You always belonged to us on loan." I stared at her, numb. Then I noticed what was missing from that storage unit. My name's Cheryl. I'm 42. I've lived in Owensboro, Kentucky for almost 15 years. This isn't where I was born, but it's where I ended up when I married Tim. And for a while, I thought I'd stay here until I died. Tim and I met through a mutual friend. He was charming in a careless kind of way. I didn't love that at first, but I got tired of waiting for someone perfect. I figured Tim was good enough, and I'd waited long enough. We got married after 2 years. He came with debt, an overbearing mother, and a father who barely said a word. His mom, Doreen, was cold but acted warm around company. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She always called me dear, but it felt like she was holding her breath every time she said it. When George, Tim's dad, had a stroke last year, everything fell apart. Doreen called me crying. Tim froze. She asked if I could help. And just like that, my life became about adult diapers, sponge baths, and sitting by a man who couldn't talk anymore. I did it because it needed to be done. Not because anyone thanked me. Doreen hovered. Tim stayed busy doing yard work or working extra hours, though I found out later most of that time was spent in his friend's garage drinking beer. I was sleeping in the guest room by then. George needed round-the-clock care, and I was the one doing it. I'd wake up to suction his mouth or shift his body so he wouldn't get sores. I washed his clothes. I wiped his chin when he drooled. I did all that while my own dad was dying. My dad had prostate cancer. It spread. I told Tim I needed to go see him more. He said, "George needs you here." So I stayed. I missed my dad's last month. I missed holding his hand when he slipped away. I missed his voice calling my name. When my sister called and said, "You need to come now," I packed a small bag and drove to Lexington. I kissed George's forehead goodbye. Tim didn't come with me. I buried my dad 2 days later. During the service, I felt my phone buzz in my purse. I didn't check it until that night in my motel room. It was a voicemail from Tim. "You don't live here anymore." That was all he said. I thought I misheard. I played it again. I stared at the wall for a full minute before calling him back. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same. I texted. Nothing. I drove back home the next morning. I was still wearing my funeral dress. The sky was gray. I pulled into the driveway and saw new locks on the door. I knocked. No answer at first. Then the door cracked open and Doreen stood there. Full face of makeup. Pearl earrings. She said, "You always belonged to us on loan. You've done your duty." I asked where Tim was. She said, "He's moved on." Just like that. Like I was some kind of employee who had finished a job. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there. She handed me a post-it note. A storage unit address. Said it was all there. I drove across town and found the unit. My stuff was in boxes. Sloppily packed. My books were bent, and half my clothes were still damp from the wash. My photo albums were thrown into a bin with bathroom towels. But I noticed right away what was missing. The watch my dad gave me when I turned 18. A gold Seiko. It wasn't worth a lot, but it was his. It had scratches from his old job at the lumber yard. It always smelled faintly of his aftershave. Gone. Also gone, my jewelry box. My wedding ring was in there. I hadn't worn it much lately, but I kept it safe. Also missing was a manila folder with important papers, my birth certificate, my dad's will, savings bonds he'd left me. I looked through every box, every bin. Nothing. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a setup. And I was about to make them all regret it. I didn't go home after the storage unit. I didn't have one. I checked into a motel off Highway 60 with a broken ice machine and a mildew smell in the air. I sat on the bed and stared at my suitcase like it was a stranger's. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just felt gone. Then I got angry. I started calling. Tim. Doreen. Even George's old landline. Nothing. Straight to voicemail. They blocked me. The next morning, I went to the police. I sat in a small room with a young officer who looked like he barely graduated high school. I told him what happened. He nodded, asked questions like he was half listening. When I told him about the watch and my missing documents, he perked up. Technically, if the items were intentionally kept from you and they were yours, it could be considered theft. You'd need proof. I had pictures of the watch. I had photos of the jewelry box. My birth certificate? I figured I could get a copy. But that wasn't the point. I filed a report. That same day, I went to the storage facility office. I asked who had rented the unit and who brought my things. The guy at the desk, middle-aged with a gut that hung over his belt, looked uncomfortable. I can't give you names, he said. Privacy laws. I leaned in and said, then let me guess. I said Doreen's name. He didn't blink. I said Tim's name. He swallowed. I had enough. Was there a jewelry box? I asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah. Small, red velvet one. Was it put in the unit? He looked around like he didn't want to be caught. Then he whispered, no. The older woman took it with her when she left. My stomach dropped. Doreen had taken my things. My dad's watch. My ring. My identity, piece by piece. I started making a list. Not just things that were missing, but things they owed me. Tim had debts, credit card debt, car loan, personal loans. I'd helped pay them. I had proof. Bank statements. Emails. Texts. I'd sold my own car years ago to help pay off his. I emailed a lawyer. A real one. Not a cheap online thing. I told her everything. I told her I wanted what was mine, and I wasn't going to go quietly. That was just the start. 3 days later, my sister called. She'd gone to clean out our dad's old house, and she found something. An envelope with my name on it. Inside was another will. A newer one. One that named me sole beneficiary, not both of us, just me. There was a letter, too. Cheryl, I know you've given too much of your time to people who don't see your worth. I wanted you to have this house. It's yours now. Come home. I sat on the edge of the motel bed and finally cried. Not for Tim. Not even for the watch. For everything I'd let them take without fighting. But now I had a house. A base. And I had proof they stole from me. I moved into my dad's old place a week later. Quiet town, outside Lexington. I got a dog from the shelter. I planted marigolds in the front yard. And I started watching. I watched Doreen's social media. I made fake accounts. I checked Tim's online banking. He never changed the password. Rookie move. That's when I saw it. A withdrawal. Big one. $10,000. Same week my dad died. My stomach turned. I traced the account. It was mine. My savings bonds. Cashed in. They'd stolen them. And I wasn't going to let that go. I drove back to Owensboro one more time. Not to see them. To see her. Doreen's sister, Mabel. She always liked me. She never liked Doreen. She's a snake, Mabel said once, not even bothering to lower her voice at Thanksgiving. I showed up at Mabel's door with a bottle of cheap wine and a fake smile. She let me in. We talked for an hour. I told her the basics. The betrayal. The storage unit. The missing items. Mabel's eyes narrowed more with every word. Then I told her about the savings bonds. The bank account. The timing. That's when she said something that changed everything. I overheard Doreen say something back in February. She said she had to take care of the will situation before Cheryl caught on. I didn't know what she meant until now. I asked what else she knew. She poured another glass of wine and leaned in. Tim forged your signature on a withdrawal form. She bragged about how easy it was. Said you were too distracted wiping George's mouth to notice. I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. I left Mabel's house shaking. Now I had a forgery. Theft. Identity fraud. I called the lawyer. She told me to stay quiet and let her handle it. I wanted to scream. But I listened. Then came the biggest hit of all. Tim remarried. 3 months after I left. Quick courthouse wedding. No photos online, but Mabel heard it from her neighbor, who works at the clerk's office. His new wife? Her name's Tara. I remembered her. Blonde. Used to come over for cookouts. Said she worked with Tim at the car dealership. She brought a pie once and called me sweetheart. I wanted to break something. But then I got curious. I drove by their new place. A rental. Small. Not even a yard. And guess what was hanging around Tara's neck? My dad's watch. She wore it like a necklace. Gold chain through the band. My stomach flipped. I took a picture. Sent it to my lawyer. She said, perfect. A week later, I filed a full civil suit. Property theft. Financial damages. Fraud. Emotional distress. But I didn't stop there. I went to the dealership. I told the manager, some red-faced man with a gut like a punching bag, that I needed to speak with HR. I showed them proof Tim forged my signature on financial documents. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I let the paper speak. They fired him 2 days later. Doreen called my sister's house that night, looking for me. She left a message. This isn't over, Cheryl. You're making a mistake. I played it 3 times. And I smiled. She was wrong. This was just getting started. It took nearly 9 months for the case to go to court. That's 9 months of silence from Tim and Doreen. 9 months of watching their lives fall apart from a distance. The dealership let Tim go, and word spread fast. Small-town gossip works better than newspapers. People stopped trusting him. Tara didn't last either. She left him after 3 months of unpaid rent and one too many lies. She pawned my dad's watch for cash before she skipped town. Joke's on her. It was worth less than $200. I got it back after the police retrieved it from the pawn shop. I remember holding it in my hand like I'd just found my dad's voice again. Scratches and all, it still ticked. Just like me. In court, it all came out. The forged signature. The missing funds. The false claim that I abandoned the home. My lawyer shredded their story. Doreen sat with her arms crossed the whole time, like the world owed her something. Tim looked older. Tired. He tried to blame it all on his mom. Said she convinced him I was just using them. That I didn't really care about George. That I was only sticking around for inheritance. He even tried to twist the truth, said I refused to let him see my dad. Said I was emotionally manipulative. But my text messages, voicemails, and even pictures said otherwise. The judge awarded me full financial restitution. Over $43,000. Plus damages. Plus legal fees. Doreen was forced to surrender the jewelry box. She had hidden it in her attic behind Christmas decorations. Inside was everything. My ring. My passport. The envelope with my dad's bonds. Even an old letter from him I forgot existed, sealed in a plain white envelope. I read it in my car, outside the courthouse. It said, "Don't let anyone tell you what you're worth, Cheryl. Take back what's yours. If they betray you, show them how strong you really are." I cried so hard, I had to pull over halfway home. After the case, Doreen's friends started pulling away. Church folks stopped inviting her. Her face got tighter each time I passed her at the store. Tim moved out of town 6 weeks later. Last I heard, he was working at a gas station near Paducah. As for me, I sold their old house. Legally, I was still part owner, and the court forced the sale. Every dollar went into fixing up my dad's place. It's not fancy, but it's mine. I planted roses beside the marigolds. I got a new dog. I joined a pottery class. I started laughing again. I made mistakes. I stayed too long. I kept giving to people who never gave back. I missed my own father's final breath because I was too busy wiping spit off a man whose own son couldn't be bothered. But I learned. Now when people ask me what happened to my marriage, I tell them the truth. I tell them I married a coward raised by a thief. And I walked out stronger than both of them put together.